Okay.
Okay.
So we're back. This time we're going to talk more about parenthood and persons with disabilities and our best advice.
And I just want to add, as you have seen, we have some friends, colleagues from the Croatian Paraplegic Association today, and also I had the opportunity to speak to on the break here. I don't remember your name, but you are in charge of doing a similar project in Croatia, and I hope all of you go over and talk to them because they know everything about the Croatian way of living and what it's like for the mums here. But we're happy we are here, and we will tell you a little bit about our best advice from our own experiences when it comes to parenting with a disability. Because I remember myself, when I was going to become a parent, you know, talking about role models, you always, like, you see a family, mom, dad, and a baby, and they push a pram or a stroller, and they lift and they bathe, and it's very sort of practical, of course. And I remember thinking a lot about how am I gonna do this? I can wheel myself along, but how am I gonna push a pram, for an example? Or how am I gonna take care of a slippery little baby to wash it when I have problems with my balance myself? So I had a lot of thoughts before.
I actually had nightmares before I had my first baby about bathing it, and then that it would fall out of my hands down on the hard floor in the bathroom. So here we have a couple of the things that I really strongly kind of connect with parenting and being a parent. Some of the
like the cot. Yeah, I don't know if you can see, it's a cot up the top, and in Sweden we have those cribs, you know, it's really hard. You have to lean over and pick up the baby. And I thought, how on earth am I going to do this in a good way? And it's just, especially when they're little also, and you're a first-time parent, everyone worries. And I worried a little bit extra, I think.
In our project, Mamma Papa Lam, or SCI Parenting, we've been working for a couple of years with trying to ask parents around Sweden, how do you manage everyday situations? What kind of aids or technical aids do you use in order to be able to take care of your child? And we have gathered those aids or things or solutions on our website, and you can find it there as well. And we will now show you some of the aids and some of the ways how parents with disabilities get around with their children, how they solve those things that we couldn't see how we would solve.
And the whole idea with this database is, of course, to sort of inspire and especially show mums and dads that live in little city where they feel like the only person in a wheelchair, for them to get ideas on solution, on everyday challenges.
I got the question here before from one of the women with disability, how I got around with my pram. And the answer is that I actually don't use a pram a lot. This is the way how I've gotten around with my children when they were really small. I used a baby scarf. No, I think this is actually a scarf. A sling is what you will use. And I used it the first time at the maternity ward when I put it on, put my baby in, and suddenly I could actually move around with my baby on me. And all midwives always look so happy when they see me. But this is actually the best way for me to get around with my baby. And when we got home, you know, Sweden, winter time, cold, I just took my jacket outside around the two of us, and we kept warm together, and I could go out and go for a walk without any problems at all.
And on the right hand there you have a little bit of what would you call that? It's
knee cot.
It's a knee cot, I didn't know that. But it's something that you can sort of put on your knees, where the little baby, when it's an infant, can lay down, and you can have a little belt to secure it. And in Sweden, you actually can sort of borrow this for the first 1 or 2 months and then hand it back to the place, to the hospital or the place where you get your wheelchairs from. They have these handy.
And especially dads have said that it's really useful. I don't know really not why, but there are several dads that have used it in our kind of network.
Then as a kid grows up a little bit more, most kids that have parents in wheelchairs seem to end up on the knee, in the knee, but you want to sort of secure them. So there are different ways of doing this. And this father is showing how he's using an aid that's actually called wriggle wrapper. You're supposed to put it on a normal chair, I think, when you go away and you don't have a baby seat. But it works perfect also to have a baby secured on your knee.
It's kind of a portable high chair, but this dad found out that he could put it around himself instead of around a chair. And I'm not sure if they are sold on the market anymore. I think they are in Great Britain. But in Sweden, there are a couple of those that are kind of going around in between parents with disabilities. As they are used for a year, and then it's sold on, and it's sold on, and it's quite funny to see how they tend to turn up in our network over and over again. Here you have Erica with the baby sling.
It's a baby sling, okay. Yes, and I don't have as good balance as Nora, and I probably wouldn't do so many outings in the beginning when the baby was really little. But after, this is Anton, when he was a little bit bigger, I could have him in the sling, and I would put like a little pillow under his bum to make him sit up a bit, and we would go out like that for little walks. But then it's a way to get out, but if they fall asleep, you probably have to go home again, because having them in a pram, it's easier when you go with other mums for walks and so on. But he even fell asleep like that, and I would sort of tuck him in under my jacket, just like you did.
And on the picture with me, I have my second most kind of used aid. It's kind of an elastic belt that I actually just put in the front. You know, those that are always in a pair of pants. I put them in 2 front ones, through that, and then around the waist of my baby. And that way she couldn't fall out. And she actually fell asleep like this quite often on my lap as well. And I could just pull her a little bit more down, so she was laying more. And then when she was awake, she was sitting more. And it was really useful. I actually didn't need it that much, because it's quite amazing how good balance babies of people in wheelchairs get. It's quite a big difference to have a baby on your lap that is used to sitting on the lap of a parent in a wheelchair, and have a baby that is not used to sitting on the lap of a parent in a wheelchair. The babies that are raised sitting on laps have an amazing balance. The other ones just fall off. Well, they don't fall off, but they are a lot more wobblier.
And I'm thinking about this. One thing with when you're in a wheelchair, a good thing is there's always a place to sit, and a safe place, and they're only 10 months or so before they learn to climb up. I'm sure you agree over there. They will love to come up, whatever you're doing. They want to sit close, and there's a lot of closeness, I think, still. I went to Africa a couple of years ago, to Botswana, where Spinalis has been working, setting up rehabilitation clinics. And one mum down there in Botswana said, European women, you are so busy with putting the babies away from you. You put them in prams and in jumping things and all that, where they always carry them very close to your body. They don't use strollers or prams or anything. They carry them until they can walk themselves. And I think one good thing with being in a wheelchair, you can never say no. They will climb up and sit there when they feel like having a little bit of a cuddle, you know. So I think you get a lot of closeness like that.
Definitely. Here is Josephine. She has a spinal cord injury that is slightly higher than Erica's. She doesn't have very good hand function. And she has used a harness quite a lot on her both boys. In order to be able to lift her boys up from the floor. So she has the harness on, and then she can grab on to the harness when she needs to lift up the baby, and that way she can use the other arm to help herself up. And then she actually has, she can attach the harness to her wheelchair, so when her kid sits on the lap, she can fixate it or put it there with the harness as well, and that way the child can't fall out.
And I did pretty much the same, and I got this advice from another mom who was also in a wheelchair, and she said, just use a normal harness and then take the long strings and put them like between the legs, and it turned out it's almost like a parachute thing, or that you can sort of lift the baby. It's like a little bag. It looks a bit strange, but kids, you know, they are flexible. They don't really care the way you get them up from the floor, because that was one of my big worries, because you hear it's so important for the baby to be laying on the stomach with the head and how to learn to crawl, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm never going to get the baby up from the floor. So for me it worked with this, and also with this kind of pants with the straps, like jeans pants that were firm, close. I could lift them in the clothes. It looked, but kids, they're not as really...
they don't mind.
They don't break as easy as you think when you can grab hold of the clothes.
I have just grabbed them in their clothes, and I think it works pretty fine, even with a kind of wobbly pajamas. I've grabbed them a lot in their clothes. When I was expecting our oldest daughter, one of the very good advice I got from Erica was, Nora, learn how to change diaper on your lap. You will be a lot more independent as a mother if you learn that. And it's a lot lays in that, actually, because you can have a really adapted baby changing table at home. But as soon as you get out anywhere, it's very hard to find a baby changing table that works. It's quite often that restrooms for people with disabilities also have a baby changing table. But if you actually open up the baby changing table, it's this high up, so it's impossible to use sitting down. And quite often it also takes so much space in the bathroom that you can't get around there with a wheelchair. So I learned how to change a diaper on my lap. We had two quite different techniques. I have a good lap. It's almost like a little table. So I've always had our children laying on their back, changing their nappy, pretty much as at a regular table. Having good grab around both of their feet. So even if they crawl around, they can't crawl out of my lap because I'm holding on to them. And when they grow a little bit bigger and don't want their nappies changed anymore, I still have this firm grip around their foot, so they are kind of lying there trying to get away, but aren't able to get away.
And I did pretty much similar. I always had like a towel on my knee, and then it will happen, you will get peed on, but you do anyway if you have a table, I think. But kids go along with most things. It's nothing strange to them, and you learn the technique. And I always held on to like an arm and twisted and turned, and I think it's a good way to stay independent, to use not too much technical advice, maybe.
In this picture, we have the 2 aids that you can actually rent from the kind of technical aids place where we get our wheelchairs as well in Sweden. It's a cot that you can hire and lower electrically, and you can open kind of the sides on the cot so you can get into it and take care of your child. And next to it, there's a baby changing table that can go up and down. They are really useful and really good. The only thing is that they're both quite big. To fit the cot in a regular bedroom with a double bed, where you also want to fit the wheelchair, can be quite hard. Bedrooms aren't normally that big. And also the baby changing table can be quite hard if you want to have it close to like running water in a bathroom. It's quite hard to fit that one there.
But some parents find it very helpful and use these.
Yes, Robert here, the father, he loved his 2 devices. And I think you used the baby cot, didn't you?
I used the baby cot for my first son, and for the second we didn't have room. It's much bigger than a regular. So for the second baby, we did another solution. This is just a regular IKEA cot, and we took away the front, what you call them, with, yeah, you see what I mean. I've sort of taken away, made it open with a hole at the front, and then I put like a very strong piece of fabric there with Velcro and bands, so I could open it from the side. And then I put some wheels on it. It was all handmade or homemade, so I could sort of I could have it there as a little bit of a playpen too, daytime. And that's little Samuel hiding there behind.
And I think this solution is actually genius. A lot of parents, nowadays it's quite common with those cots when you take one side off and you can have attached to the bed. And a lot of mothers that I've met have found this really useful. I used it myself because then you can have the baby on the cot and just take it over to you when you breastfeed at night and then put it back again. On the lower picture, there's another solution. That's a crib that's hanging from the ceiling on a fjäder. And it can actually bounce a little as well.
It's got a bit of a bouncy thing.
And you can roll in underneath it and actually open a side, so you can get quite close to the baby when it's lying in there. Put it in there, tuck it in, open it up, and then bounce it to sleep. Our colleague Anna loved this one.
And this is for high chairs. That was also one thing, because in Sweden you often have the high chairs at the table where you have to lift the baby and sort of stick it in with the legs ending up right. But this was just another one that I found, a Norwegian baby high chair, where you could sort of have the baby on your knee and then just slide it over from the side to sit like that. And the right-hand picture, which doesn't really show really well, is another one like that, where you can sort of slide it from the side.
Otherwise, high chairs are quite hard to use. I also have troubles lifting my child up and down from a chair, but I solve it by always having the chair really close to a table, and then I can put my kind of elbows on the table, and that way I get a lot steadier, so I can actually lift the child. And now, when our daughter is a year and a half, she helps quite a lot herself, so I kind of lift her up halfway or just a little. That way she can manage to get her foot underneath herself and stand up, and then she kind of goes over to my arms and pretty much goes out of the chair herself. Children get quite used to helping us a lot. They know what they need to do in order to get out of the chair, which they want to once they've eaten.
Another difficulty that, well, I couldn't really get my baby in and out of the car myself because I just, not until they were pretty big, they could help a bit. But when I still had a really small baby, I think I had some help most of the time. But after, because my kids are pretty big now, there are car seats now that sort of turn, so you can like turn them 380 degrees, so the kid that's going to sit facing forward, you turn it so it's much easier to put into the car, which is really makes the lifting easier.
You don't have to lift over the edge, and the child can help a lot more climbing in itself. So this helps, because otherwise the part of lifting children in and out of the car, that is quite heavy work. Here is Josephine again. With her first baby, she didn't drive her car at all on her own. She couldn't manage to get her baby in and out of the car. And at that time, she and her husband were living in the city, so she could get around without using her car. But with their second child, they had moved to the countryside, and she really needed to use the car in order to get out at all. Otherwise, she was kind of isolated out in the where they were living. And there she found out that if she had the car seat for an infant firm with the seat belt, and she didn't take the seat belt off, she could just pull the seat belt out to maximum and then take the car seat quite far out, so far out that she can actually manage to get the child into the seat, secure it, then put the car seat back in the car and pull the seat belt so the baby was secure. And you know, in Sweden we are very concerned with car safety and how we place our children in the cars, and that they are really secure when traveling.
We were a little bit surprised when we drove in Croatia or in Zagreb yesterday, and the car next to us, there were two kids bouncing, climbing from the front to the back, from the front. They were like 2 or 3 years, and they were wild, and the car was driving. And especially Nora, who had her car accident, she's like,
not wearing a seatbelt and being a mother, I felt terrible. I almost opened the window and tried to knock on the window of the other car. Yeah.
These are a few photos of people that use power chairs or different permobil, who have sent pictures about their own adaptations, how they sort of found solutions to get out and get around in a power chair and to take a child along. And it's everything from adding like a bike seat to special solutions to having a really wide seat and a little car seat next to it, the booster seat. No, it's up the left-hand top there.
All of the solutions that we show you here today, and a lot more of them, are on the webpage SCI Parenting as well. And I also have, not for everyone, but I have a couple of those books with me where we've kind of gathered the best advice that we have. It's in Swedish, but the pictures in the book are quite self-explanatory. So I will give you more of these afterwards. When I was expecting our oldest daughter, I thought that the first year would be the hardest, when she was totally dependent on me. I was so wrong. When she got about 1.5 years, she started walking quite late. She was 17 months when she started walking. But when she was 18 months, she was running, climbing, jumping, and extremely curious. when our oldest daughter saw something interesting over there, she just ran off. She had no boundaries of where her mother was. When I was expecting her, I remember talking to an occupational therapist about my worries that how my baby would run off from me and wouldn't listen to me. And I remember the occupational therapist saying, "Don't worry, Nora. The child will know that you can't run after it, and she will test your husband so much more than she will test you." This occupational therapist was so wrong. Ida doesn't take any consideration of me being in a wheelchair at all. And those are 2 pictures taken at the playground outside of our house. And this is how playgrounds look in Sweden. We think a lot about security and that the children shouldn't hurt themselves when they fall off if they fall down. So it's quite soft sand, and around the sand there is a kind of plank sitting there. And it's impossible to maneuver there with the wheelchair. Can anyone imagine what the little child in the blue suit is saying on that picture? Can anyone guess? Yes. I want to go up in that swing. Mom, help me. I want to swing. And I tell her, Ida, I can't help you. And at the beginning, she accepted that Mommy can't help her. After a while, when she got a bit older, she looked at me and said, "But Mom, you have to try." So I try every time. And then I solve it with asking others for help. And old ladies that are out walking their dogs, they're the best. Ida loves the dog. The lady loves to swing Ida. And that's pretty much how we solve it. And that is one thing that I've definitely learned from being a mother. That is to ask for help when I need it. I'm proud of being independent. I don't like to ask people for help. But with my daughter, if I don't ask people for help, that will mean that there's a lot of things that she can't do. And that hurts my pride even more. So I've definitely become better at asking people for help. And also going to this playground, I need to kind of do a risk calculation. If we go to this playground and she climbs up and falls down, will she kill herself? No, it will hurt. It will hurt, she will cry, but she won't kill herself. Okay, that means that we can go there, and we go there. Because if I only take her to places where I can be 100% responsible of everything she does and 100% independent, that means that we can only stay at our home. And that is not the thing that I want to teach her. I want to teach her to be curious, to try new things, to go to new environments. And that also means that I need to let go of some of my fears and some of my boundaries.
I think that my firstborn, he was one of those that your occupational therapist would have spoken of, because he wouldn't dream of running away. He would stay close, and he would even see, like, "Mom, there's a step over there," when he was like 2 or 3 years old. So he so kids are different, that's what I want to say.
My daughter goes up those 3 steps and says, I can go up, the bird can go up, but Mommy, you can't go up. And that's pretty much how she tries me.
And I think I was probably a bit more cautious risk. I probably wouldn't take my kid to a playground like this on my own. I would be a bit, but we're all different in our attitudes to mothering. But of course, what hurts is when the kid can't do something because of my disability.
And I am really aware of the risks. It's not that I'm not aware of the risks, but I tend to place myself in between the playground and the road where there are cars. So if she would decide to run off, I will be on the side where there can come risks. If we're out walking on the street and I see something that can catch her interest, that can be potentially dangerous, I try to take the interest of that thing by showing her something else. We tend to sing a lot when we're out and she's sitting on my lap, or do things that keeps her occupied with things that aren't risky.
I was worried about, take next. I was worried about that with traffic when I go to the local shop. How am I going to solve that? So I had like a little strap, sort of like the one with the frog there. But I actually I bought one at the pet shop for rabbits and dogs, a little strap that I would take on the back of the jeans where you put the belt. I would snap that on, because when we cross the road, you know, if it would happen. So I sort of used that when I was close to traffic or water.
You kept your child on a leash.
Yes, for safety. Yeah, but I mean, toddler years can be hard. Anyone who has had children knows they run around until they have some sort of common sense. At 4 years, maybe.
And the years between 1.5 years and 3, when they have all this energy and a lot of more ability to run than we do, but no sense, they are definitely rather hard. As I told you, I haven't used the pram much. Instead, we quite early on, or our daughter quite early on, got one of those run bikes. Do you call that in English? Where there are no pedals. Instead, the children run, and that has been how we got to childcare and from childcare, because then the kids have a lot more energy they don't need to use that much energy in order to go, and that worked really well with our energetic daughter.
So that's a bit about some of the advice, and there's more to find. And then we've also been working on sort of creating platforms for meeting other parents. And we have included all kinds of disabilities, or physical disabilities. Our apologies today, we are not at all talking about visual impairments or deaf, because we don't know much about that, so we have sort of said that we have worked towards a group that we sort of have own experience around. But what we've done was to have family get-togethers, like we met in the afternoon and had some fun games and stuff, just for the parents to come and sort of exchange advice, and for the kids to see that there are lots of other parents, lots of other families who also have a mom or a dad who's in a wheelchair or uses a power chair or has some kind of disability. And we also worked with family camps, as I said earlier, together with a big disability organization in Sweden. And what we have done that's been really successful, and that what I heard has been done in Croatia as well, is that we have started a community online. We have a group on Facebook called Parents in Wheelchairs, and in Croatia you have a Facebook group called Parents with Disabilities, which is great, especially if you live away from the bigger cities. So you can meet other people online and ask questions and get lots of good advice. And that's a very cheap way of getting people together, and very efficient.
But also what we've seen, what we kind of didn't think when we started working with this, we thought that we would have all those family get-togethers where families meet and the children get to meet each other and meet in real life. And they have been quite successful, but it's also hard to get people to come to those get-togethers, because parents or families with small children, they are kind of busy. There's a lot of things going on, and suddenly the child gets a fever or something happens, and it's hard to find the time that suits every family. But online, the interest has been a lot bigger than we could ever expect. Today we have about 600 members in this group, and someone asks a question, and within minutes answers start popping up, and within 24 hours it's quite often a rather long thread of answers, because it doesn't take much energy. You can check your phone and answer online within minutes, or whenever it suits you, whenever it's convenient for you. And people find a lot of support and encouragement in this group, and we've been amazed by how good it has worked.
Yes, and it's once again role models and asking other ones who's been down the track before. So I think it's a very good way of supporting. We might have been talking too quickly, I see the time, but to say again then that this webpage is online, where we have put together the medical information and also this practical advice, and Parents in Wheelchairs is in English, but as we've heard here today in the break, there's a Croatian group as well. And we come from the Spinalis Foundation, and if you're interested in that, you can find more information on Spinalis online. And if anyone comes to Stockholm, you're more than welcome on a study visit, how we work. And we've been able to do this project thanks from the grant. I mean, we couldn't possibly have done this if we weren't given money to work almost 3.5 years, half time, the three of us, on this. So we are very happy, because it's been sort of our baby, and it's a grassroots project, because we started out of a need that we saw, and we have realized that we can do a lot of good through this.
But I would also say that it's apparent that there is a topic that is of interest on the agenda around the world at the moment, because after all, we are here today. Our webpage has been translated and published in Switzerland. It's been translated to French and German. And we can kind of see that this is a topic coming up more and more around the world.
Wanting to have a family is sort of universal. It's not something that disappears when you end up in a wheelchair. So, yeah. And you were in Minsk, in Belarus, just a month ago, speaking on the same subject. So it's everywhere. People have wanted to empower this group and put the group of persons with disabilities sort of on the agenda, in the spotlight. Also to push politicians and policymakers to think about this group, to build accessible playgrounds. It is happening in Sweden now, but still a lot of the playgrounds look the old way, where you can't get close to swings or slides.
Any questions in the audience? I would like to open up the scene to others. Remember, we love questions.
And also we would like to say that our Croatian friends over here could probably give you the same, lots of good information from what it's like to be a mother here.
Thank you very much. Evo, inspirirana.
So, inspired by your experience, the experience from Sweden, and inspired with the tips and tricks, very useful advice you've had for the parents. And inspired by the round of parents who've gathered on a website, we heard from Maria Tomic-Breiner, who is the founder of that group. And she's also the founder of the group called the Center for the Center for Value Development. I apologize, Maria, I'll get you the microphone. Thank you, Branka, for inviting me to say a few words at this conference. 5 years ago, I talked to Branka and Ivana because I wanted to create a support service within a period of 1 year, a community support service, because I wanted very hard to get a second child, despite the fact that my husband and everyone around me told me I didn't need a second child. So I knew I didn't have the financial resources to create the support that I needed, but I knew that there must have been something that could be done about that. I'm a young woman, I was a young woman, and I had only established an NGO, and I realized that I couldn't do it on my own. So I contacted Roda, and they are specialized in parents and pregnant women. And that's how we created this project, Parental Love Without Borders. Like my colleagues said, the wish to become a parent is the most important one. Women require a lot of love and a lot of responsibility, and you are the only person who can tell what is possible or feasible and what's not. Now that I have two rather big children, I've decided that I could now use my time to help other young people with disabilities to accomplish what I've accomplished, which I think is my greatest feat in life. And that's how I came about creating this website, Parents with Disabilities. Unfortunately, we don't have as many members from Croatia as we do from the region, Bosnia, Serbia, Macedonia. But I do hope that after this conference, things will change, and I hope that we will be able to do miraculous things. I don't know how or why, but we keep getting more and more contacts or emails from young women who are somehow, it seems, becoming aware of the fact that they're young women and women primarily, not just women with disabilities, but women. And they send us messages asking what it's like, can they become pregnant, can they deliver a baby, and so on. Now that we've heard about the story and the experience of you from Sweden, I do hope that this will be a step and a motivation towards achieving something even greater. Thank you, Branka, and thank you all.
Iskreno, sad nisam gledala na sat, ali možda imamo još koju...
Wasn't looking at the watch, but if there is anyone else who would like to ask a question, please feel free so. Before the coffee break, in 5 minutes' time, use this opportunity. It's now or never. Well, I would like to ask whether a woman, if she's single, so no husband, has the support from the community to become a mother. So does she get some kind of physical assistance in the local community, some assistant, how to be a single mom? Do you get some assistance to be a single mom in Sweden when you have a disability?
Answer. I think you can get support, yes, even though we have had some problems in Sweden too, where they are we've had a backlash that it's not such a generous system and it's become harder to have help. But I think if you're a single mom, you would be not a personal assistant that you can only have if your disability is so sort of severe that you can't use your fingers, or if you're not independent. But you can't have like a personal assistant to take care of the child, but you can have other kind of support from the community, I think, to support you. Yes, but I don't think it's never very easy to be on your own with a child, and the challenge is probably even bigger if you have a disability. But I know women who has done it, and I have a colleague now, and she's single, but her boyfriend passed away, but she will be a single mum when she has her baby in April, and she will have some support, I'm sure. But I can't give you a more exact answer.
Iako može još jedno pitanje, možda...
Maybe just one more question, if you could answer. Whether persons with disabilities can adopt a child? And if they can, according to which criteria?
I know that it has been problems for that people with big disabilities have been given a no, and that has been because of the disability. But this is, I think it's 10, 15, 20 years back. But I think often you have to work with an organization that's in another country. And even if Sweden has, I think, a good look on people with disabilities, it's often hard if you go to adopt from a different country. Maybe you know more about this.
I know that there are people in Sweden that have been declined to adopt children because of their disability. The social services tend to be kind of more strict when it's the mother that has a disability than when it's a father, and a physical disability can definitely be a reason to decline a family of adopting. But we also do know about examples where people have adopted children with physical disabilities. So we don't really know, and it's much up to the social worker who meets the family to decide as well, and the international organization.
Well, on this topic, in Croatia it is impossible, or let's say very, very hard to adopt children. At least it was the case until a few years ago. But we are now seeing some positive improvements in terms of fostering children. So if a person with disability wants to become a foster parent, you can do that relatively quickly. In the past year or so, I met 5 families in which a foster mother is a wheelchair user, and she gets children for foster family without any problem.
That's great. Yeah.
Imamo vremena možda za još jedno pitanje.
Maybe time for just one last question.
I'm wondering what about the IVF treatments and fertility treatments. Are there any obstacles if the mother is disabled somehow?
In Sweden, depending on in which part of the country you live in, you can get 2 up to 4 IVF kind of tries paid by the government, and a lot of, especially men with spinal cord injuries, quite often get help with IVF, and there are no kind of limitation. No one will tell you that no, you won't be able to have an IVF treatment because of your disability. That is up to you if you decide that you can become a parent.
Are you finished? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm also wondering if your doctors have any preference for cesarean sections, or if they decide in advance that you can't breastfeed, you can't give birth, possibly not even carry the baby to term, do they have, are they biased because of disabilities?
We have seen that in some parts of Sweden, women have been recommended a C-section because of their disability, spinal cord injury. The obstetrician that we have worked really close with, she, when it's possible, recommends a regular birth, not a C-section, because it's a quite big injury to have a cesarean section. And we kind of encourage doctors and midwives from other parts of Sweden, if they have a woman with spinal cord injury or any other neurological disease, to consult this obstetrician that has specialized in this group. But we do see that there is a bigger amount of C-sections within our group than within the general population still. But I also think that it's quite often the mothers that want a C-section as well, because you think that if you have a C-section that everything will be under control in another way, and that they quite often have a fear of that they won't know when it's time, that there will be a bigger influence on their pelvic bottom muscles. What's that name? Pelvic floor muscles, if they give birth naturally, and that is quite often a fear as well. So I think it's two-sided, that both the healthcare and the women themselves think that a C-section will be the safer alternative. When it comes to breastfeeding, I would say that most women are encouraged to breastfeed, that medication can be a reason why not to breastfeed, that if you have multiple sclerosis, for example, your doctors often want you to get back on your medication as soon as possible after giving birth in order not to get worse. But otherwise, if there are no medical obstacles to breastfeed, then you're encouraged to breastfeed. In Sweden, we have a really strong midwife, or the midwife community really strongly encourage every woman to breastfeed. It's almost that we have those breastfeeding nurses that are really, really strict that everyone should breastfeed. Yeah.
Okay. When you're pregnant, are you led in the pathology or high-risk section of women or low-risk?
I think it's depending on level of injury. I think like Nora would still be considered low risk, but as soon as your lesion is up sort of in the neck, you have a high, then you go on the high risk. So if you have a low paraplegia or incomplete, you still go to the regular, or you still go and visit the regular prenatal clinic, to the clinic where everyone goes. But then, as me, who had like a high lesion, I got to go to the specialist as well. I went to the regular, but then I went to the big hospital to see the specialist every now and then too, because they wanted to sort of monitor me a bit more, or they wanted to sort of talk about what could be extra. So you go to the specialist ward where they have the neurologic diseases and the epileptic, diabetes, I don't know. The women that come in with something extra in their luggage, sort of, they have something extra on top of the pregnancy, can go to the specialist ward.
I would say that all women go to the regular checkups, to the regular maternity ward, but even me with my leisure had a contact with the specialist maternity section in order to look over some things that could be risk. I had, for example, problems with regular urinary tract infections, and they were checked up, and then the specialist put me on low-dose antibiotics throughout the pregnancy. The specialist also sent me to an anesthesiologist in order to look over what kind of anesthesia I could get during labor in order to be prepared for this. During my first pregnancy, I hadn't much contact with the specialist ward at all. Then I was in contact with this specialized obstetrician that thought that this is not a big deal. You have a low injury, everything will go fine. But with my second child, we had moved to southern Sweden to a hospital where they hadn't had many women with spinal cord injuries, and they were really taking really good caution in order that everything would go fine. So I was on so many checkups that I didn't really understand why I needed to go with them. And once our second daughter was born, they said, "Oh, okay, so everything went so good. We hadn't really needed all those checkups." But they were kind of not used to spinal cord injuries.
Okay, what do you prefer for the midwives and doctors to act towards you? Like more cautious? Like with that you can get the feeling that you're special and treated in a different way? Or would you like more for us to act normal, like you're just another woman?
I want you to act normal but professional. I want you to know what you're talking about and act normal. Understand? I want you to give me the impression that you know about what risks that there can be, and give me the impression that the risks aren't really big and that everything will go fine. But don't just smile and say that everything will go perfect. Give me the impression that you actually know what you're talking about. Yeah.
No, but I think what we heard this morning from Liverpool, where you have you have a holistic view, and this is just part of the normal pathway or track, and then you add on some extra, but definitely as normal as possible. We want no extra special treatment, more than that it's reassuring to know that someone has a knowledge or knows where to look if there's anything extra, I think.
Ok, evo još ćemo dopustiti jedno pitanje ili komentar. Uvijek se najviše opustimo na kraju. Sad kad smo shvatile da su nam
We will now allow just for one more question. Well, I would just like to comment on this question that was asked. As the girl said, we should be treated normally and professionally. Because from my personal experience, my first pregnancy was such that the obstetrician, who was a beautiful person, great person, she was in terrible fear that I will give birth to a sick child and that this will all end up in a disaster. With a great desire to prevent this, she was giving me all the possible medications, vitamins, for everything to turn out well. So when I came there and I told her, "Natasha, I'm pregnant again," she was so happy, and this time she said, "You know what, this time we can do less. We can let the body do its thing." So I didn't get any supplements or any additional tests and care. So just ask us and don't treat us differently, because then you scare us as well. Just one more comment. Maria put this very nicely. Every woman with disability who decides to be pregnant is very much aware of one's regular difficulties, because of course throughout her regular life she's very aware of all the obstacles that she's encountering, and she can share her problems with the professionals, but it's up to professionals then to understand what the person with disability is telling them. Thank you. That's exactly what I needed to wrap up this section. Nora and Erika, I hope we're a good role model for you here. I mean, Croatia is not as big as Sweden, but still, we have a big heart as well. We have to thank our great speakers. It was a great honor for us and great pleasure to be your hosts, and we do hope you will stay with us until the end. In the end, we will have some time for discussion, unless we all get too tired. You can stay here even after 5:30 if you all want. But now let's get some coffee in order to be able to do that.